Yeah, thank you very much for this interesting talk and showing the importance of speaking the same language, even computer language, I guess. I have one question here by Rolf Würdemann. And the question is, perhaps it's already answered in the talk, but do you define different versions of your API to provide backwards compatibility?
So it was not answered in the talk, but indeed we do define different versions. So on the GitHub repository, we'll find currently that's the version that we're finalizing is a release candidate for version 1.0. And then later on, we'll put all the versions on the GitHub and you will find a numbering. And so each time when you do a query, you can indeed specify the version of the API that you want to query to ensure this backward compatibility.
All right, are there any further questions by anyone? You can also raise your hand and speak up if you like.
Okay, I raise my hand.
Okay, Matthias.
Let me just ask a question because, Gian Marco, you mentioned actually, which is very, very important, to extend this thing to the experimental databases, which in fact, many of them are not even digital at the moment. And the London Bernstein is basically not yet. I mean, they're working on it. But the other thing which is missing is what you mentioned before when you said how complicated it is to make a query for the computational databases. Even more for the experimental databases, we need actually a good description, of the metadata. I mean, you have to know actually what you're looking for. So what is the situation in the experimental world? So how much work is there still ahead of us to really do something meaningful?
I think there's indeed a lot of work to be done on that side. And so, I mean, so there's been, a workshop that was organized last year in Berlin, in which there was discussion between experimentalists and people from OPTIMADE. And so we try to involve more and more experimentalists. So at the next meeting that we have, so that's next week actually, that's going to be a virtual event, of course. And so it's on the SECAM website that you can find it. And so we're going to have more experimentalists. I mentioned also the people from the Starry Data that will be involved there. So we'll hope to see, what the API is and how they store these kind of metadata. And that would probably require to extend the API. So there's going to be one person who is working on ontologies from Linköping. That's I forgot his first name now, Lamberts. And he's going to be there next week. And so we will be discussing with them, trying to do whatever is needed to include that in OPTIMADE if possible.
I mean, Lambert is not really for material science, but he's actually an
ontologies,
expert,
in ontologies, yeah.
But I think what you need is what we discussed earlier is basically what Annette Trunschke and Mark Reiner are discussing. I mean, what are the missing information which are still not there for experiment? Right?
Yeah, I saw in Mark Reiner sent a link to a JSON format there in which there was a typical metadata for XPS, and so that's the kind of thing that we need to look at it, definitely.
Yes. Are there any further questions? I don't see any physical hand, nor electronic hand, nor written comment. I have to second what Matthias just said. I mean, there is a lot of different data formats and different APIs and so on for experimental, because every vendor of instrumentation has some kind of data format that they store their information in, and it's just a big mess. So there needs to be a lot of effort put into putting all this into on the same basis that we can really compare apples with apples. Yeah. All right. If there are no further questions, then thank you very much for being here and also presenting your talk.
Thank you, everyone.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Yep. Bye-bye.